On 5 News, 350 victims. The staggering scale of child abuse in football is revealed by police. The England manager, Gareth Southgate, says one of those who has come forward is a former teammate of his.
The bravery of the players that have come forward is exceptional, and to hear the stories is heartbreaking.
More than a quarter of all police forces are now investigating allegations. Also, immigration hits a record high. An estimated 650,000 people came into the UK in a year, including an unprecedented number from the EU. Changing speed limits and a ban on speed bumps, the radical plan to cut down pollution, and life after Strictly. We catch up with a politician turned dancer, Ed Balls.
The whole family's been at times a bit embarrassed, but they've also loved it, I think.
Hello and welcome to 5 News. I'm Sian Williams. The child sex abuse scandal in football seems to heighten by the day. 350 victims have now reported abuse within clubs, and 16 police forces are involved in investigating the claims. Today, the new England manager, Gareth Southgate, said the allegations from former players, mostly from his generation, were heartbreaking. Julian Drucker reports.
He is the future of English football. But today, once again, the focus was on the game's past. It was confirmed the number of victims who've reported child sexual abuse within the UK's football clubs is well into the hundreds. For Gareth Southgate, the growing scandal has even touched his career.
Played with one of the players who's recently come forward, and the reality of that, as they have said, is that they haven't felt able to speak about that until this moment. And that's completely understandable. And of course, with the benefit of hindsight, you always relay then things that you've seen from the past and have an understanding of, okay, maybe that's why we saw things we saw.
But is football any different today? Southgate, a dad of 2, believes things have changed.
I can also speak as a parent, and I think it's important. I've been involved in grassroots teams. Pretty much every charter standard club now has their own child protection officer. So it would be wrong to say that nothing's been done over the years.
Hello, you're through to an advisor at the NSPCC helpline.
The NSPCC's Special Abuse Hotline, set up just a week ago, has now had more than 860 calls. But as one of its organisers told 5 News, some allegations relate to the present day.
It would be naive to assume that there are not ongoing issues and concerns in football and in other sports as well. So certainly the nature of the concerns and the calls and the contacts that we're getting relate to historic and non-recent abuse, but also current concerns and situations as well.
The survivors keep speaking out. Former Newcastle player David Eatock was abused by youth team coach George Ormond, who's already been convicted of child sex offences. Today he appealed for Ormond to admit everything.
First of all, be a man and own up to what you've done, own up to what you are, and you need to get some help.
Football's darkest secret continues to hang over the game. There is still no sense how vast the problem truly is.
And it sounds vast already, Julian. 350 potential victims, 16 police forces involved. These are staggering numbers. Break them down for us.
Yes, 860 calls to that NSPCC phone line we just saw. That's a large number. That's not 860 people, though, because multiple calls can come from more than one person. So far, 60 referrals have been made to over 100 agencies across the UK. Compared to the Jimmy Savile hotline that was set up, this is 3 times the number at that particular stage after 1 week. That other big figure you mentioned, 350 victims, some of those referrals added to the people who've already rung their local police forces. That's how they've come up with 350 victims, and that continues to grow. People are still ringing their local police forces. Today, the Warwickshire Force, Devon and Cornwall have also said that they've had calls. So a quarter of the UK's police forces now investigating this as well.
Astonishing. Julian, thank you. Immigration to the UK has hit a new high, according to the body that estimates the figure, the Office for National Statistics. It says 650,000 people arrived here in the year to June. That's 11,000 more than the year before. But what's key is how many people stay, and that's called net migration, and that figure hasn't much changed. Well, the numbers are often framed in the debate over Brexit, with some businesses saying they rely on EU workers to move ahead. Simon Vigar has more.
It was one of the big themes of the referendum, and the latest migration figures tell the story of the year leading up to Brexit. Net immigration remains at 1/3 The EU figures are a new record, meaning the government is still way over its target.
The main obviously issue in the country is obviously housing, and obviously where are these people all going to stop? Where are they all going to stay?
I'm an immigrant myself, and I shouldn't say that, but enough is enough.
It all depends on who is coming in. That's the main question is who is, what they're bringing into the UK.
Brompton Bikes is a great British success story where freedom of movement has several meanings. 1/4 of the workforce is from the EU.
At the moment, I'm taking it day by day. It's a little bit of uncertainty what will happen next, but to be honest, it's a global company, Brompton, and I've got colleagues from all over the world.
It's a pretty good place to still seek opportunities, even after the exit of the European Union.
The refrain from the boss here is familiar. There just aren't enough Brits going for the jobs.
We don't sit there and actually say, right, OK, we want to employ 4 Polish, 3 Romanian. We employ good people, people hungry, people with... Some people have a skill set, some people not, but they're hungry to actually come in and work.
Total immigration in the year to June hit a new high of 650,000. Almost half of the new arrivals came from the European Union, 284,000. The net migration figure, the number of people who've entered the UK minus the number who've left, is now 335,000. That's just below the record of the previous year.
I don't think there's any great surprise that the figures are pretty much flatlining. And of course, the opportunity to really affect the numbers coming from the European Union will only flow from the deal we make following the Brexit negotiations.
Taking back control was the quick soundbite. Details of the new migration agreement will take rather longer to wrap up.
Let's talk to Simon now. He's at Westminster. Simon, the government has long said it's going to bring immigration down. When's that going to happen?
Well, it's all tied up in the Brexit deal, isn't it, Sian? And we just simply don't know. Today, Downing Street said it's going to take time. They are miles off their target of tens of thousands by 2020. I think the target's going to be unskilled migration, that's clear, but it's down to the deal. A lot of uncertainty over what the Foreign Secretary did or didn't say to ambassadors about free movement of labour. Also, what the Brexit Secretary said today here about access to the single market. There are more questions than answers. And there's growing anger here on both sides of the House at that uncertainty.
Simon, thank you. The pilot of a plane carrying a Brazilian football team said he had run out of fuel moments before crashing in Colombia. The cockpit recording revealed the pilot made a distress call to air traffic controllers pleading to land. 71 people died. There were 6 survivors. Moving video has been released of the Chapecoense team on board, laughing and joking ahead of playing what was meant to be the biggest match of their lives. Here, a 15-year-old boy has been charged with the manslaughter of a Polish man, Eric Jóźwiak, who was attacked in Essex in August. Initial reports suggested it was being treated as a possible hate crime, but that's no longer believed to be the case. And the retired astronaut Buzz Aldrin has been airlifted from the South Pole after falling ill. The second man on the moon was visiting Antarctica in a tourist group when his health deteriorated. The White Desert Tour Company said Mr. Aldrin was stable and under the care of a doctor. Speed limits and speed bumps could be changed as part of plans to reduce levels of deadly air pollution. The proposals are being suggested by the health watchdog NICE to cut harmful emissions from cars by encouraging what they call a smoother driving style, as Charlotte Grant reports.
Yeah, we did some French.
French, did you? 9-year-old Lola doesn't live far from school, so it should be a straightforward walk home for her and her mum. But not when you live on one of the most polluted streets in the country, and not if, like Lola, you suffer from asthma so badly you've been hospitalised 5 times in the past few years.
It's quite overwhelming, the amount of pollution there is on our street, and the cars are just jammed up, and like you may tend to cough a bit because it's quite
when we're crossing the road.
It really smells.
So how to stop the harmful effects of air pollution? Well, the health watchdog NICE believes it's come up with some solutions. The recommendations include variable speed limits on motorways, as vehicles create more emissions when they're speeding up and slowing down. For the same reason, they want to redesign speed bumps on local roads and install no idling zones around schools to prevent parents leaving their engines on during school drop-offs.
The traffic on our roads is now at record levels. This is the first time the health watchdog has published guidelines on how to tackle air pollution, pointing out as many as 25,000 deaths a year can be linked to the harmful emissions and environmental risks associated with air pollution.
Air pollution is a public health crisis and it's affecting all of our health. So this guidance is really welcome, but we do need to see more action from the government to clean up our air.
These are proposals rather than policy, but the healthcare experts believe now is the time for air pollution to be taken seriously. Charlotte Grant, 5 News.
Coming up on 5 News.
There are university lecturers, there are NHS workers, there are ourselves, helpers, carers. Anyone could become homeless at any moment.
Life without a proper home, the family's forced to live in temporary accommodation. And Ed Ball's on fire. He tells us about glitter balls and fake tan.
When they said to me, do you want a fake tan in the first week, I laughed because I thought you either got a tan on holiday or maybe you were under a sunbed.
We'll see you after the break. Hello and welcome back. You're watching 5 News. At the end of a long day, many of us take going home for granted, but the reality for others is very different. And today, the charity Shelter warned almost 250,000 people are without permanent homes. They say that's a conservative measure. Well, Ruth Liptrot has been speaking to one family about how they're managing this winter.
When you think about homelessness, you probably think about people sleeping on the streets. But there's more to it than that. This family may have a roof over their heads and both parents are working, but they're homeless too. This is temporary accommodation and it's their 4th place in 2 years.
A home is more than just a dwelling. A home is somewhere that you feel that you can put roots down, somewhere that you belong to. And if you're in somewhere that you're going from pillar to post or property to property, that's not home.
Their problems started when their oldest kids left home and they were penalised for having an empty bedroom. Since then, they've been moved again and again.
One particular property had rats in the garden and they were so numerous you could almost pet them. You had mice crawling over your bed at night and you had cockroaches festering everywhere.
At one point, the children were moved almost 2 hours away from their school, and all of the uncertainty has left them feeling very insecure.
The children do not want to leave you. So you have children crying, you have children acting out because they're so unsure and they know that you're unsure.
And Gillian and Mark aren't the only ones in this situation. In their previous temporary accommodation, they met people from all walks of life.
There are university lecturers, there are NHS workers, there are ourselves, helpers, carers. Anyone could become homeless at any moment.
For now, the family are in Barking in East London. They like it here but haven't heard from their local authority about whether they'll be able to stay.
We feel more comfortable here, but we're not settled because we don't know the circumstances of our residency. Our mentality is still living out of a box.
With just over 3 weeks till Christmas, most of us are thinking about what we'd like. All this family want is to know where they'll be living. Ruth Liptrot, 5 News.
Now it's almost a year since Storm Desmond brought flooding to thousands of homes and businesses. Some of the most dramatic scenes were at Glen Ridding in Cumbria, when its 19th century hotel was destroyed. Today, the hotel reopened, marking a milestone for the village, but there are fears it still remains under threat from a similar storm happening again, as Peter Lane reports.
Storm Desmond turned the normally quiet beck here into a raging torrent. Floods and landslides cut the village off. The hotel at the heart of Glenridding was swamped, water racing through the building. This was one of the areas hardest hit in the misery of last December. Christmas was cancelled.
Water was running through this way, through there, and into the bar, through and round. Came to about 3 foot, I would have thought. But
1 year on, they are finally back in business, but more fearful than ever of what the weather might do.
I get anxious when I hear that there's flooding going on in other parts of the country. I get very anxious for the people and what they have to go through, and also for ourselves, because we always in the back of our minds think, what if that happens again?
A year of work has seen the banks of the Beck strengthened, so how much safer are things now for flood-hit areas like this?
We've identified where improvements can be made and are working to try and implement those, either through funds that we've raised or that we can help communities raise themselves. We're better at issuing flood warnings, and we're also better at responding during an incident and actually hoping to prevent some of the flooding happening.
In the midst of last year's flood, a local construction firm helped clear the Beck. Robert operated the digger and has been dubbed the man who saved Glenridding.
It was challenging work, no question about it. Just mind-blowing the amount of stone that was in the Beck. We didn't know how deep the Beck was, we didn't know how wide the Beck was.
With the weather much calmer this winter, Glenridding is open for business.
The tourists are back in town. It's great to see everything coming back together, the sort of heart of the village.
The last few licks of paint at the hotel, the Christmas trees are in place. It's been a long year in Glenridding, recovering from the damage done by Mother Nature, who today offered quiet skies. Peter Lane, 5 News.
Prince Harry and the pop star Rihanna have taken an HIV test together to raise awareness for World AIDS Day. The pair took the test in Bridgetown on the island of Barbados as his tour of the Caribbean comes to an end. It's the second time the Prince has taken a test in public in 5 months in an attempt to reduce the stigma surrounding the virus. He teased Rihanna it would be painful, but the star wasn't fazed. And a man in New York has made off with a bucket full of gold. The gold flakes, worth around £1.3 million, were in the back of a truck. When the security guards weren't looking, the man struck, grabbing the bucket and making a run for it. But his getaway wasn't so simple. The bucket weighed more than 6 stone. He was forced to stop and rest with a heavy load several times. Police say it's unlikely the man actually knew what was inside before he grabbed it. Once upon a time, he was a cabinet minister, the Shadow Chancellor, a senior fellow at Harvard University, an all-round serious chap. And then he did this. Ed Balls swapped the green benches of Parliament for the black tap shoes of Strictly Come Dancing and cheered us all up along the way. Well, Minnie Stevenson has been to talk to Ed Balls about the highs of Strictly and coming down to earth.
Goodness gracious, great balls of fire!
Now he's become affectionately known as Ed Glitterballs, a political mover and shaker, yes, but it was his dad dancing with a difference which Britain really fell for. Cue a sad communal sigh across the land when judges finally booted Ed and dance partner Katya Jones off Strictly. One critic called it the Brexit of the ballroom. Today I met the man whose moves charm the nation. So Ed, as we know, politicians and reality TV shows don't always mix. Before you went on, were you ever a bit worried that this could be sort of career suicide?
Well, of course I was, although I'd lost my seat. So my political career had already ended. But I was, an academic at Harvard, I was chair of a football club, and I wasn't a dancer.
Balls was the wild card of the ballroom, but it was in his own kitchen that he perfected those dance routines, as his wife, Labour MP Yvette Cooper, cheered him on every step of the way. I imagine Yvette's been watching nervously sometimes. Do you think she fancies doing Strictly ever?
She would love to do Strictly, and the reason I did it was because I think she can't, and she said to me, go and do it for me, because she's a good dancer, she's enjoyed it. I think there were times when she was amazed, horrified, slightly appalled. The whole family's been at times a bit embarrassed, but they've also loved it, I think.
It was Ed and Katya's unique take on Gangnam Style, which turned out to be the biggest crowd pleaser.
I was a bit worried about whether I would actually mess up before we actually got to the impact moment, what we call the pony. But on the Monday, Katya said to me, it's going to be epic. And when during the week, we would do a film of our routine and then go home and show it to the family. And their reaction was, oh my gosh, are you really going to do that?
Having had a political career, you would have thought Ed had seen it all. But at 49, a new discovery. Now, Ed, had you ever encountered fake tan before, and how did you find it?
I actually didn't think it was a real thing. When they said to me, do you want a fake tan in the first week? I laughed. Because I thought you either got a tan on holiday or maybe you were under a sunbed. But the idea you had it sprayed on. However, live the dream.
Ed has joked his venture into the ballroom is an indulgent midlife crisis and a very entertaining one. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
Saturday nights will not be the same. Before we go, Matt's joined us to tell us what's coming up on 5 News tonight. Hello there.
Thanks, Sean. I have to follow that now, do I? Now, look, slightly more seriously, we're talking about children gambling at 6:30. Almost 500,000 11 to 15-year-olds bet every week, according to the Gambling Commission. I'll be asking an expert just why it's attracting so many young people. And we've just seen Prince Harry and Rihanna being tested for HIV in Barbados. I'll be discussing how much attitudes to HIV and AIDS have changed since the 1980s in an hour's time.
See you then. Thanks, Matt. That's it for now. Claire Nazir has the weather next. Matt is back at 6:30. Thanks for watching tonight. Goodbye for now.